because people have the freedom to quit their job and go travel the world, they're welcome to do so. However, the other part of freedom, though, is that the people that don't choose to do that shouldn't be punished for committing themselves to a career. But in order for us to have our freedom to be able to do what we want, we can't demonize other people for not wanting the same things that we do.
Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Join us as we help explain exactly what having a solid financial plan means, as Jake draws from years of experience in helping hundreds of individuals get financially organized and focused on their goals. We hope you find Upticks educational, entertaining, and shareable. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to Upticks with Jake and Cory. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Jake, thank you for having me.
What's new, Cory? Got anything?
We're into the fourth quarter, believe it or not, already. It seems like this year's really come and gone pretty quickly. We're just not too much new, Jake. I think we've got a lot coming up as a company, a lot coming up in the fourth quarter. I think everybody has probably a lot going on personally in the fourth quarter as well. It's just that time of year, but it's been wonderful. So all is well, but not too much new, I don't think. How about you?
Yeah, I feel like I overbooked myself. It's all bubbling up. I got dinners, birthday parties. We got an election coming up. We've got, as of the recording of this, we got our pickleball, which will be come and gone by the time this is out. We're going to have our client holiday event party. We're going to have our team holiday event party. It's a cool time of year.
Royals playoff games in there too.
Hopefully there's some more Royals playoff game. We'll see as of the recording of this. The Royals are still in it. Hopefully they're still in it. So yeah, a lot going on. It's a good time of year. You know what's weird? I was looking. I've played about the same amount of rounds of golf this year as I did last year, but it doesn't feel like it. So I don't know how.
Does it feel like you played more or less?
Feels less. It's very interesting to me. I'm going to revisit that. I think I have played more away rounds of golf and not as much home, not as much at Mission Hills. So that's probably why it feels less. But anyways, a pretty time of year in Kansas City. House is coming along great. All is well. You know, I got some show recommendations. I watched that show Chaos on Netflix. It's really, really good. It's about Greek mythology. I'm rewatching Entourage. That's a blast from the past. You ever watch that?
In college, I think, is when I watched it. Watched some of the episodes.
Pretty good one to watch. What about you? Got any shows or books or anything to recommend before we kick it off here?
The same stuff I talked about last week. I'm still working on. So I don't want to believe
Fair enough. Well, I want to thank our listeners. We got a couple more listener suggestions today, Cory, so we always like to start with those. So I'm going to read the first one to you and get your thoughts. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. This says, per your advisor publication, the subject I would like to be explored and or discussed is something called greed inflation by major corporations that is supported and perpetuated by the consumer. This person talks about how you and this person have discussed this briefly in the past. He says, I don't think the consumer fully understands that we are major contributors to inflation. Government is blamed and expected to control, but consumers play a significant role in cooperation's behavior on this subject. So, Cory, what are your thoughts on this? This is a good one.
This is a good one. I have a lot of thoughts. Probably, Jake, largely opinions here, given the nature of the question, but I'm going to share them. Because let's start by just defining greed inflation. That really is just the concept or the idea, right, that companies raise prices beyond what is justified by increases in their costs, like labor, materials, supply chain disruptions, et cetera, simply to boost their profits. That's really the concept of greed inflation. And it can occur in an environment where inflation is already rising for legitimate reasons. But ultimately, companies take advantage of that to maximize profits.
Hold on. But what is he saying about the consumer? Is he saying that the consumer plays a role because the consumer is greedy and they keep gobbling up and paying these higher prices? Or because the consumer doesn't make a stand and say, no, I'm not going to pay extra money for this. I refuse to buy it. So what is he saying there?
My take on the comment here, Jake, is the first part of what you just described, is that if people are willing to pay twice as much money for the same thing that they bought 50%, or I guess, 50% less a few years ago, that if we're willing to continue to spend money on those items.
Yeah, Cory, but I would argue people need
raise the
toilet
price.
paper, they need Kleenex, and they need all these things. So
I
what are
agree.
they supposed to do? Not buy it?
I agree. So, and it's, again, we're talking opinions here, but so I do want to point out, though, that in my opinion, there is a basic underlying problem of corporate control that crosses party lines in our country, because candidates can't win elections without donor dollars. Donor dollars are distributed intentionally. People support causes that they believe in, or support candidates that they think.
What does this have to do with greed inflation?
Hear me out. Our Federal Reserve, Jake, is a function of our Congress. And the people at the Fed have stated publicly before 2020, Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell, Lel Brainerd, these people at the Fed have stated that low inflation was their biggest regret of their time at the Fed. So and they've got what they've asked for, but my point is, I don't understand why the cost of living increasing for people too slowly is a problem. So my point here really, Jake, about greed inflation is that corporate interests fund candidates, candidates set policy, policy influences behavior. Our Federal Reserve is a function of our Congress and our country. And the people that run the Federal Reserve have explicitly stated multiple times that low inflation is their regret. Their monetary policy supports an inflation target, which supports lowering the purchasing power of the dollar. So there's a lot of things here, and I completely agree that we don't talk enough about this. But that's also just my opinion.
So you think there's some conspiracy that corporations are funding politicians to get reelected? So politicians want higher inflation so corporations can go charge more money? And again, let's be clear. I'm not in the corner of the corporations here. I'm saying, like, how does the consumer play? You're saying the consumer plays a role because they still buy these things.
Yes, their behavior. But I do think that their behavior is influenced by policy. I do.
I don't know about that. So I think people's behavior is based on short-term emotions, like what we always talk about people not to do. Toilet paper that I brought up during COVID.
Yeah.
COVID really wasn't a stomach illness; it was a respiratory thing, and yet people were buying the crap out of. How about that one? That's a good one for a laugh. Buying the crap out of toilet paper.
That's good.
Right. And there were supply issues, right? Because they couldn't get it here. They couldn't make it fast enough or whatever. So to me, that was a consumer behavior that basically adjusted consumption or adjusted sales. Right. And so I think the person's point is that consumers do drive inflation more than the government. I would argue they drive
money as a consumer, though. The government does. That's my point. I think
the consumer doesn't do what?
I said the consumer is not the one that controls the purchasing power of their dollars. Government policy does.
Yeah, but the consumer controls their purchasing.
Fair. I agree.
So I think from my studying and history that the consumer controls inflation, not the Fed. I think the Fed pulls levers, pushes and pulls things to create an environment that is inflationary or not. But I think the consumer controls it. I think the consumer controls how bad inflation is. And I think, sadly, the consumer gets either brainwashed by marketing, or they get a panic, or they get greedy and they gobble up these goods and services and they cause the prices to go up or down. So I think it's a dance. I don't know about your research on the Fed saying, I'm not saying that those people didn't say that, but I think the Fed, what they were getting at is that inflation below 2% was a regret. I don't think they're saying 2% is bad. I think they were saying 1% was bad. But I could be wrong. And it's a great topic.
Why does it need to be 80% though? Why do they need to target an increased cost of living, period? That's my real question. And people will
I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
We talked about this before. I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
They need to target it because if we don't have inflation, if the Fed is not controlling the flow of money in some form or manner, I think then inflation and deflation would be wilder. and our economy would be that more of like an emerging market or a frontier, like some of these third world countries. I think that's why you need the Fed to control it somewhat, because otherwise, think of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is this decentralized currency that there's not really a lot of control, and the value of Bitcoin goes all over the place. I think that's what the dollar would do if you didn't have some sort of oversight from the Fed. Now, I'm not saying the Fed is great. I'm not saying they've done a perfect job, but I think it's a necessary evil because, Cory, I think if you don't have that, you get much wider swings, and I don't think that's good for people. I don't think that's good for people. I think then you rolling it back to like an emerging market. I don't think that's good. Look at that.
That's fair.
Did I win?
Do you know how long the Fed has stated publicly that their target for inflation is 2%? Do you know how long they've done that?
No, how long?
Since 2012. So what about everything before that?
Did they not step it? Was it their target 2.5 then or 2.2, or did they not even have one?
They didn't even have one.
Okay. Well, I think it's good they have one, personally.
That's fair.
It's good one.
It's messy. It's nuanced, right? There's a lot there. But I do think to bring this back home real quick, Jake, at the end of the day, what you, what me, what everybody watching or listening to the show can control, right, is how we respond to what happens around us, right, and what's happening. We're not going to, you and I are not going to, we could argue until we're blue in the face. We're not going to change this, but we can control, and take agency in how we spend our own money and how we evaluate our own financial situation. And regardless of who's to blame for inflation, we all still do have the choice today and moving forward for how we spend our money.
But it's hard to hurt everybody. But you think of these meme stocks, Cory. This is another prime example. These meme stocks go hyperbolic because of some stupid guy on Twitter, right? And so he, in my opinion, is causing mispricing in the market because of his stupid tweets. You could think though, but how can, you're right, we as consumers can control our behavior, but the problem is during the pandemic, how are you going to tell everyone to stop buying toilet paper? I tried to buy toilet paper because it's hard to find.
That's right. Exactly.
It's
and that was just contributing, right? It was. It's okay.
It's hard.
It was. That's what happened. It is hard, and it's messy, and it's nuanced, and I do recognize
Good topic. Good topic. All right, let's go on to the next deal.
Do we have a poll?
We have a poll result, Cory, but remember I don't think we got enough response. So I just want to hear remember the poll we talked about last week?
Yes, freedom or
security.
Pose
a question. Yes,
the question was, what do you value more, your freedom over your security?
Yeah, and I want to hear yours. We'll be short on this one. So I was thinking about this morning. Freedom or security, what do I value more? And I think I got to go with freedom personally. I think that security could come at a great cost. And I don't know if, like, for example, like if the government guaranteed me some sort of security, but I couldn't do what I do for a living, or I couldn't live where I live, right? Or I couldn't play golf. I don't know if I would like that. So I would go freedom. What would you go?
Absolutely freedom, without a question. Yeah. Because I couldn't have security without it. I couldn't have security without freedom.
Right. All right, good. All right, good. All right, so that was our poll from last week. We didn't get a lot of response or any response. No big deal. Our listeners, it's all good. But if you got anything, if you got any comments, email Luke at falconwealthadvisors.com, and Luke will make sure we bring him up on the show. We've got one more, actually, from a listener, so thank you. I'll read it to you, Cory. The question that doesn't come up in the tax the rich on unrealized gains, so he's talking about this potential policy that they're talking about taxing the rich on unrealized gains, is do we get to take a tax loss on unrealized losses that is not limited to the $3,000 annual loss, which has not been adjusted, mind you, Cory, since 1978. You want to talk about adjustments. He did attach a link here. Cory, do you have comments on this?
Yeah, the link is really aligned with everything that you're reading right now. It basically was just talking about the bill that was introduced.
So do you think if they're going to tax unrealized gains, should they let people write off unrealized losses?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why I don't think it'll ever get passed, though. I don't think they're ever going to be able to tax people on unrealized gains. That's silly. I think that's just ludicrous.
Yeah, and I think that it is also, it's that $3,000. What is interesting about the bill, though, the policy, Jake, though, was actually the $3,000 point about the annual losses and capital losses. That's what was introduced actually was legislation to say that number should be higher because
Right.
$3,000 in 1978 is not what it is today.
Right. I mean, we're talking that's 46 years ago.
Yeah, it's like Social Security and the taxation of Social Security benefits. Those thresholds have not been adjusted for inflation. It's why so many people pay taxes on their Social Security benefits. So it's interesting how inflation affects some of those things, but not others.
Yeah, it's a great point. And thank you for the listener that sent that in. We've got a great audience, Cory. Credit to our audience, right?
Absolutely.
Credit to our audience.
Great stuff.
And thank you. Please like, share, subscribe to our content. The whole reason Cory and I are recording Upticks is to enhance financial literacy. So again, if you know somebody that's interested in getting our weekly email, simply email Luke at falconwealthadvisors.com, and you can make sure Upticks is directly emailed to their inbox. Again, a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, a thumbs up on YouTube. All of that stuff is greatly appreciated. Cory, I think we're at 1,600 subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty awesome. And we got about 1,000 people roughly that watch this every week. So look at us. Look at us go.
That's right.
Started with 0.
Momentum. We're going to keep it rolling.
Started with 0, right? Well, me and you watched it.
That's
right.
Me and
you watched it.
I watched and listened. All right.
That's right. All right, here we go, Cory. Take us away here.
Play ball, Jake. Our headline here. They're breaking every retirement rule to be off now, not later.
Yeah, have you heard of this, Cory? It's called micro retirements. You ever heard of such a thing?
I don't think so.
Okay, so basically a micro retirement is where a 20-something-year-old or a 30-something-year-old are basically quitting their jobs and they go travel the world with the plan to go back into the workforce after they're on their little 1-year, 2-year vacation. And I got a few questions for you, Cory, as a business owner. So one, let me ask all my questions. Are we okay with this? 2, would you hire someone, Cory, to work at Falcon Wealth Advisors if they had such a big break in their employment history? And then my third question for you is, would you do this as a business owner? Would you do this? So first, are you okay with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Because of freedom versus security in our conversation earlier.
Okay, all right. Would you hire someone with such a big break in their employment history, though?
Probably not.
Okay. All right. So you're saying it's okay to do, but I'm not. You can't work here. Now, would you do it?
Isn't that freedom? Isn't it?
It's freedom. Would you do
we
it?
have the freedom to choose who we hire. People have the freedom to do what they want.
Would you do it?
Quit my job to travel or to micro retire?
Well, you're a business owner, so you could come. Let's say you could come back. Let's say you say, Jake, and this would be great. If you want to do this, let me know. Jake, you need to pay me for a year. You take my money, Jake. But when I come back, I want my job back. We would tell your clients you're going on a sabbatical. Cory's taking a year sabbatical. Him and his wife and his daughter, they're going to go travel the world. So we tell everybody. It wasn't like you just disappeared. Would you do that? Do you have any interest in doing that?
Not right now. A year in my life, a year away from doing this. I was away with my wife for a month when we had a baby. And I recognized that, 1, I appreciated the opportunity to be at home with my wife and with the baby. 2, I appreciated the team and our clients, right? We've been able to build the team here that
I had your back.
I had your back. And I know you had my back. And I know our team does too. And our clients know that. So ultimately, that gave me a lot of confidence, Jake. But it also, I recognize even in a shorter period of time like that I missed being here. I loved being at home, but I also missed being here. I think that this is a part of who I am, what I do. It's important. We're very grateful to have our own business, to be business owners, and to have the opportunity to be able to work freely in our country. And I do value that. How about you?
Look at you. Very patriotic episode today, Cory. Very patriotic of you today.
Thank you.
So
how about you?
So I don't have any interest in doing it. I love what I like. Rachel and I went on a vacation, right, to New England for a week. I was ready to come home. I was ready to come back here, not even home. Like, I love my home, right? I love my dog. I miss my dog. But I wanted to come back here to work. I think I could be wrong. This could change next week. But I think the only circumstance I would do that, Cory, is that if we were drastically going to shift our practice or my role probably. Like, if I was going to come back and I was going to open a hedge fund, I said, okay, Cory, I'm going to come back. I'm going to open a hedge fund. I want to take 6 months or a year to think about how I want to do this. Then I might do it, right? So that, or, whatever, right? So That would be the reason, but I have no desire. I have no desire to do that. And yeah, maybe as a business owner, we're lucky that if I wanted to take a vacation, I can take a vacation. And like you said, we do have a great team that's servicing our clients. So that's not so dependent on you and I like it used to be. But I think it's interesting that people are doing that. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like on the back end, though. Like, if you're 25 years old and you're skipping off work for a few years, now the article suggested these people didn't care. They're like, I don't care if I got to work longer. It's fine. So
it's always what younger people say.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Not older people. It's
but
true.
It happens, and I don't think there's any shame in it. Like you said, I think it's a great point you made. It's freedom, and if people want to do that, and maybe they work in a job that's easy for them to go pick up and go. Maybe they're a computer programmer and they can go get a job as a computer programmer really easily. Our business is much more relationship based, and especially with the markets and financial planning, I feel like you've got to be in it because the rules change too much. And so like if you're out of it, like I said, that's the only reason I would do it is if my role was going to drastically change. I was going to do something different. But anyways, go ahead.
Can I make one more quick point here?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
On the same subject in the same article though, because I'm thinking this through as we're talking about it, Jake. I do think that, this part of the freedom versus security piece, I don't want to keep going back to that, but I did make that comment here. Because people have the freedom to quit their job and go travel the world, if that's what they want to go and do, they're welcome to do so. However, the other part of freedom, though, is that the people that don't choose to do that shouldn't be punished or vilified for committing themselves to a career, to success, to whatever it is that they want, because perhaps that's what they want instead of taking micro retirements. But in order for us to have our freedom to be able to do what we want, we can't demonize other people for not wanting the same things that we do.
That's an excellent point, Cory. I think that's where America is right now, though. It's polarized.
I think so too.
We made COVID political. COVID should have never been a political. Like the Democrats wanted vaccinations and the Republicans didn't. It had nothing to do with your political. This was a health issue. And I think you're right. I think this is at risk of turning into a political point, and there should be no judgment on what someone does. And you're right. The people that keep working shouldn't be punished or shouldn't be looked at as boring or bad or stupid or whatever. It should just be what it is.
Right. It is. I mean, it is. Everything aside, it's bothersome to me, Jake, to see if I don't care if it's Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or someone else that is ultra wealthy. The idea that they should be taxed, that they should pay to cover this or that for someone else who's made their own choices. Like I recognize that this is complicated and nuanced, but it's like the idea of, well, it's not fair that they don't pay enough is the reason that a lot of people support taxing unrealized capital gains, taxing the highest income folks at the highest thresholds. It is like, that's my issue, is that just because, like, inherently, if we are not wanting to incentivize people to be successful, or we want to punish someone because they have been successful, we just need to take a long, hard look in the mirror at ourselves and our own lives and our own choices to say that, I don't want or need the government or anyone else to tax someone who's ultra wealthy to make my life better. That's up to me. I have the agency to do that.
It's crazy though, Cory, and I appreciate you saying
that.
You have the freedom to. I appreciate you saying that, and I don't think that's coming from a political stance. But the weird thing is, supposedly half the country feels that way. Though half the country feels like the ultra rich should pay more, and that's what's interesting to me. And I agree.
People have been led to feel that way, in my opinion.
Yes, you're right. Persuaded, 100%. Persuaded to feel that way.
Everything's split right down the middle. Everything is split right down the middle. Like we've almost stopped feeling sorrow or sadness. It's like that gets neutralized and turned into anger at institutions and other people. It's someone who doesn't agree or align with us. I read, Jake, after the recent vice presidential debate, people talking about how these two candidates, because of one belief, one comment that they made, that comment was a disqualifier, which means that nothing else that they say is valid. We have to stop treating each other that way. Like we can't disqualify human beings because they don't believe exactly what we do. And I do feel like that environment has been fostered.
Yeah.
to try to figure out how we ended up where we're at, so split on everything. Because I think that debate for a lot of, go ahead.
I don't blame the politicians for that, though, Cory. I blame social media. I think social media has just turned into this feedback loop, this echo chamber. That's what's happening. Is like, because before you would watch a debate on TV, you would talk about it the next day at work or at school, and then you move on. And you don't really talk about it again unless you're really, really into politics. Now, that debate is going to get re-fed to people every day. Every day they go on their phone, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, every day.
Over and over and over.
It's just going to get recycled all the way to the election, probably. All the way. And again, that's I think so. I don't think social media is bad. I just think the way that it's being used is it can be evil, and I think that's what's happening. And it's so I don't know what the answer is.
I think the politicians, though, I agree with you completely on exactly.
Politicians have always been this way. They've always been this way. They're not different. It's social media.
The current administration in this calendar year hosted their first ever, influencers conference at the White House, because so politicians clearly understand the power. And my point is just the politics, the social media, and the media, traditional media, everything we read, we watch, et cetera, that those three combined is it's like a three-headed monster that's all around us and invisible at the same time. And it's influencing and shaping the way. But we also, we shouldn't be disqualifying other people because of what they believe, period. I don't care what they believe. Like, another human's another human. And we need to, if we just slowly move in that direction, that's how we can slowly focus on actually trying to solve some of these issues. So we're not just fighting with each other and blaming each other for everything forever.
Nah, the issues aren't going to be solved. They're not.
Fair.
They're not going to be. And that's not me being a cynic or negative. It's just not going to be solved. As long as you're humans, you're going to have conflict. It's just what it is. I hear what you're saying, though. We're trying to work together towards a shared vision. I think that's what I think that's going on. I think this country lacks leadership.
Yes.
And we as citizens need a shared vision. If we can fundamentally agree on 1, 2, 3 things, I think that's what you're getting. I think that's what's missing that used to be there. And I think the politicians have way too much power now to influence people's viewpoints. It's like, why don't we just all focus on America being the best, or America being a great place to live, or a safe place, or whatever that vision. Again, this isn't my vision, but the leadership's vision, something that everybody can get around. Everybody. That's what would be cool. That I think is possible.
Right.
But I don't think we're going to solve all the problems.
Or the other party is the reason for all your problems.
Right.
Vote for me. Right? And it's just
it's so stupid.
And
I'm so glad I'm not a politician.
I know. I don't know how yeah. So anyhow, I digress.
Man, very, very patriotic episode, Cory. I think we're at a good stopping point today. Do you have anything else? Do you have any parting comments?
My parting comments here, Jake, would be just to state that my opinions that I'm sharing here have very little to do with political parties, and they have everything to do with us as people and as citizens of our country. So I do not look at either political party today and think, ooh, that's exactly who I agree with or align with. I don't at all. And that's the reason that I'm thinking let's zoom out. Let's focus on the big picture here. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we do for our clients and our business. We zoom out, we look at the big picture and think about how can we have the most impact? How can the services we provide be the most valuable as we continue to build our company out? We should think about, frankly, more people should think about our country and our elections and the way that we treat politics and the way that we treat each other the same way. Let's zoom out and think about how can we make things better instead of who we can blame for what's wrong.
Good one. And I think my last point I want to make is that even though the politicians try to paint a picture like the last 3.5 years have been awful, or the 4 years before that have been awful, you know what? It hasn't been so awful. COVID was awful, but I'm talking about just being an American citizen is still awesome.
That's right. And ask yourself the question, is it awful? Was it actually awful? Or do people feel like it was awful because someone told them it's been awful? That's an important question to ask yourself too.
Right. Now,
go on, Jake. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
There still are millions of people out there struggling, I'm sure. But my point is, I don't think it's the politician. I think again, our country is so free and open and flexible that, I think if anybody wants to do it for themselves, they can. If they need to seek out help, it's there. And that's what they should focus on. Like I said, I still think this is the best country to live in. And I think the politicians want to make you, like you said, feel a certain way. Don't let them. The good one. Right. Good way to wrap it up, Cory. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you all for listening and subscribing to Upticks. We hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.